Hello and welcome to a new episode of AWS On Air. My name is Javier Ramirez. I'm a developer advocate at AWS, and today we're going to be speaking about a brand new service, Amazon SageMaker JumpStart. I have with me some very special guests. They are part of the team behind this new service. I have with me Jared, which is a product manager for Amazon SageMaker JumpStart. I have Jonathan, which is a software engineer in the team, and also Tyler, which is also a software engineer. So if you've been paying attention, Amazon SageMaker JumpStart was released just a few hours ago. I believe it was about 3 or 4 hours ago. So it's brand new, super exciting. For those of you that you have not been following, maybe Jared can tell us what is exactly SageMaker JumpStart?
Yeah, great. SageMaker JumpStart is inside of SageMaker Studio, which is SageMaker's machine learning IDE. And what it is it's a graphical interface that provides a myriad of content that we also enable users to easily be able to launch. So some of those content streams include pre-trained models, open source solutions, end-to-end machine learning solutions, blogs, videos, and example notebooks.
Cool. So what you mentioned is because in the past with SageMaker, of course, you could already use pre-built models, but I believe you use the term pre-trained models. So I don't know, maybe Jonathan, could you tell us what these pre-trained models are about?
Yeah, sure. So pre-trained, when you look at a machine learning model in general, you have two components. The first component is the code, the architecture of the model. So when you go and, for example, on PyTorch Hub or TensorFlow Hub, you will see those different models. And you also have the model parameters. And those model parameters are determined by training. So when you train a model on a certain data set, you can have millions of parameters that are determined by training. So what JumpStart does for you is that it brings you pre-trained model that you can use directly out of the box. Those models are trained on a data set that will make them relevant for a range of applications, of standard application. So this is what we mean by a pre-trained model.
So
So I can just, oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
yeah. So at a little bit of a higher level, essentially a pre-trained model is something that has already used millions of images or text files and gone through rigorous training process that can take up to several weeks in order to actually train this model because of how much computation goes into training some of these larger open source models for computer vision and NLP tasks.
Well, that's super cool because if in the past I wanted to use a model on SageMaker and I didn't have enough data or I didn't know actually how to exactly train the model, it was quite difficult. But now with this, I can just start straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, so with these pre-trained models, you'd immediately be able to deploy them to an endpoint to start getting predictions. And so some of those examples might be image classification, which simply tells you what's in an image, or object detection, which actually kind of tells you the position of objects in an image, or even kind of sentiment analysis through NLP, just transformers.
Cool. So I have here one question. I believe this will be for Jared because you are the product manager. So out of everything you can do with Jumpstart, which is the thing that excites you the most?
Yeah, I think that I'm the most excited about the special experiences that we're wrapping inside of Jumpstart. So making it really easy for a user to click in a user interface and with a single click launch an end-to-end machine learning solution, deploy one of these pre-trained models to an endpoint so that they can start getting predictions, or even fine-tune that pre-trained model, which I think that we'll talk about a little bit more in this conversation.
So you mentioned like end to end. I believe that's called on Jumpstart parlance. I guess that's a solution, something like that. And I guess Tyler can tell us a little bit more about what's a solution here.
Yeah, absolutely. Solutions include supporting architecture to solve a problem end to end. They integrate with SageMaker modeling services, but they also include API gateways, automated triggers, data stores, and pipelines. So with a single click, a customer deploys this stack to their own account And then a notebook they download guides them through exploring this solution so they can see if it's similar to a business case they have and understand how we can help solve their problem for them.
Cool.
So that's what.
Yeah,
So that's letting us.
just 1 second, just to be extra
Yeah.
sure I'm getting this right. So it's not only that we have the pre-trained model with the data, you are giving me absolutely everything I need to go from getting the data to go to production with for a specific use case, not just the model and the data, but also the whole pipeline. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We want to show off how you can leverage other AWS services with SageMaker, and we want to show you how to solve a problem end to end.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Ernest,
that.
I interrupt you.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It really helps our users actually be able to bridge the gap between just doing modeling and being kind of stuck in some kind of Python notebook and actually being able to get these models into a production environment where they're actually being used. And with those templates, integrating those models with other AWS services, it really demonstrates how to use SageMaker in an actual development application.
Oh, that sounds quite interesting, but just for me to understand and to see really what this means. Tyler, could you tell me which are some of the solutions that I'm going to be able to use out of the box when I start using JumpStart?
Yeah, absolutely. These solutions target a specific business case. And one solution we're excited about is called the Explain Credit Decisions. It will help you understand why your instances have made different decisions based on credit that a customer might have available or not. We have other solutions like detecting financial fraud with a couple of different methods and predicting vehicle maintenance and even a training gamification called Battlesnake. That's a fun way for you to get started with machine learning. And one of our customers took the explain credit decisions and then used that to take the basic case of what that solves, which is a binary classification problem, and applied it to a different task, which is to analyze churn within their organization.
Oh, I'm super happy you mentioned that because when you started speaking about explain credit decisions and financial fraud, it was like, yeah, that's super interesting. But as a developer, I don't get myself, I know for a lot of developers that might be their day to day. But in my case, I don't really work with those systems. But it's super interesting that I can still take a solution that has been designed for a different use case. But since in this case we are just talking about binary classification, against for Chan, and I believe that it's much more common because if you have like any kind of subscription model, a game or I don't know, like electronic content, digital content, whatever, you want to know if customers are going to stop using it. So that's super interesting for me. And so yeah, we've been already speaking about what JumpStart is. We've been speaking a little bit about the solutions, what you can do with them. And Jonathan told me already what's a pre-trained model. But which are the models I'm going to be able to start using when I use JumpStart?
Yeah, so I can take this question. When you log on to the JumpStart landing page, you will be able to browse a wide variety of models, and we focus essentially on natural language processing models and computer vision models. And you'll be able to get models from PyTorch and TensorFlow, very popular models such as ResNet, SSD for object detection, with paired models for text classification. And from there, based on your search, you can decide which models fit the best your application, or perhaps you're benchmarking and you would like to compare the model you are training or you're preparing against some of the standard state-of-the-art models out there. So JumpStart brings you, makes it very easy for you to do this.
Cool. So what we can do with this then is like because sorry about that, Jonathan. I don't know if you noticed, but your audio was breaking a little bit. So I'm just going to try and go over a couple of things you mentioned there. So you mentioned that we can use models for computer vision directly, and we can use also models like BERT for and natural language model, of course, a transformer model, which is super interesting. So that means basically I can straight away work with a system that has been trained on the vast amount of data that AWS, the AWS team already has there. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So those models come pre-trained, and you will be able to use them out of the box. And you have two ways of using them that JumpStart provides you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. There is some noise in the line, but yeah, we can hear you. And
Okay,
there is something that Jared told us, when we were preparing this, and I really like it, which is the implication actually of being able to work with a model which is straight away. So I don't know, Jared, if you want to tell a little bit about the implications of working with those large models that are pre-trained.
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned earlier, even some of these models, it takes up to weeks to actually be able to train this base pre-trained model. And so when we're considering that, you're essentially getting all of that base fundamental learning for free, because you don't have to train the model from scratch all over again. If you want to apply these models to your own use case, it's really simple in the interface to click and point to your data in S3 and be able to convert the model. So maybe it's trained on 1,000 specific images that like dog, cat, boat, etc. But you need it for some other use case, such as, is this photo going to be printed by a user, yes or no? Or any other type of classification problem that you might have that you're trying to solve for. And the same is applicable for the other models that Jonathan mentioned across both computer vision and natural language processing tasks.
And for those kind of models, which functionality is JumpStart actually providing?
Yeah, so JumpStart's actually providing the ability for them to one-click deploy. So that deploys the model to an API endpoint that makes it really accessible for anybody to actually be able to start sending images and get predictions back. The other functionality that we're wrapping is the ability to kind of simply click in the interface and point to data that you want to fine tune or iteratively train the model again, so that it takes all of that fundamental learning and applies it to your own data, so that you don't have to train from scratch again. It makes training a lot faster and cheaper, while still generally providing really good results.
Oh, so it's not all or nothing. It's not that, I can use just the pre-trained data or my data. I can take advantage of all the training, all the money I'm saving, all the time I'm saving already, training the model, fine-tuning the model. And on top of that, I can add my own library of images, and it's going to behave better for my specific use case, because actually, I'm using my data there, which is, super interesting. Again, not only for, of course, for vision, but also for things like language that I understand they can be computational, very, very, very expensive. So I can just train the top layer.
Yep.
So this is like, to me, it sounds like magic, because you are speaking about things that sound super easy to do. You speak about, hey, I have a solution and you have everything end to end. And I give you a model which is already like totally pre-trained. But if you want, you can actually modify whatever you want, and we can train you with your data. So what I want to see here is actually show the customers how it feels, how easy it really is to work with us. And I believe you have a demo prepared. Is that right?
Yep. Yes, we do. Let's go ahead and spin it up.
Cool. So I'm just going to let it play.
The very first step to accessing SageMaker JumpStart is to open SageMaker Studio. You can do that by going to the AWS console, finding Amazon SageMaker, and then Amazon SageMaker Studio. If you don't have Studio set up yet, you can easily do so here. In this case, I already have Studio set up, so let's just go ahead and open it. This brings us to the Studio launcher. From here, there are two main ways that we can access SageMaker JumpStart. The first is to click on this call to action, go to SageMaker JumpStart. The second is to find the JumpStart icon on the left side pane that kind of looks like the Eiffel Tower, and then clicking Browse JumpStart. Once JumpStart is open, you can immediately see that there is content displayed for you to browse or search. In the case that I was specifically interested in solving a fraud problem, I could type fraud in the search bar and see autocomplete results, or hit enter and see a paginated view of relevant results. In this case, there are several different content types ranging from solutions to blogs to videos that are relevant to fraud. You can also go back and browse by specific content type. For example, if I wanted to see what SageMaker algorithms have examples, I could click View All, which brings me to a paginated view of all of the SageMaker algorithm notebooks inside of JumpStart. Once I find something that interests me, I can open it and view it in read-only mode. Once I decide I want to use this notebook, I can click Import Notebook in the top right corner, downloading it to my Studio file system. To dive into some of the more rich experiences, here's Tyler to walk you through Solution.
Inside SageMaker JumpStart, you can choose from a list of end-to-end solutions that leverage multiple AWS services to drive machine learning applications. Open a solution to review the description and architecture and see if this solution applies directly to your use case, or if it's a solution you'd like to explore further. If you decide it is, just click Launch. This particular solution, which is deploying, uses Amazon API Gateway, AWS Lambda, Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose, S3, and endpoints and models to drive both directed and undirected learning. It'll take a few minutes to deploy, so let's take a look at a solution which is already deployed. On the left pane, you can see all the solutions available to you, which you have deployed or are currently deploying. Here's the same solution which deployed earlier. Once the solution has deployed, click Open Notebook. And you'll be able to run through each of the items in the notebook, along with reading descriptions of what each step is doing. In this case, we're importing some data, and then we're going to visually inspect it in a table to see what it looks like. Then we're going to use SageMaker SDK to execute unsupervised learning of this notebook. This data can be replaced with your own data, so you can see how this solution applies directly to you. Every artifact you generate, both when launching and inside the notebooks, shows up under generated artifacts. You can manage endpoints that you've generated directly inside SageMaker Studio. To get a quick look at how this particular endpoint works, you can click Use Endpoint in Notebook. These notebooks are short and clearly demonstrate exactly what this endpoint does to help you get started quickly using our solutions for your use case. Let's take a look at a solution in which we've run through the entire notebook. While running training and endpoint creation jobs, the notebooks output rich data, including tabular, graphical, and test output data. At any of these stages, you can change out this data with your own data. If you want to delete any of these individual resources, you can do that with the artifacts table. And when you're ready to complete the solution, you can click delete all resources. Let's take a look at what you can do with third-party models in SageMaker JumpStart.
With SageMaker JumpStart, there is no need to be a machine learning expert to integrate powerful models in your applications or analysis. We prepackaged over 150 open source deep learning models from PyTorch and TensorFlow. The models we bring you today cover two of the most important use cases of machine learning. Text models that you can use, for example, to detect spam in an email or text message. And computer vision models that you could use, as another example, to detect objects in an image. Now, let's take a concrete example of how SageMaker JumpStart can help you integrate these models in an application you're building. Let's say you're interested in automatically classifying whether a customer review on your website is positive or negative. Since this is a text classification task, let's search for models that do this. And let's say that after doing some research, you're interested in using the Albert Bayes model from TensorFlow. So again, we want to integrate this Albert Bayes model in an application we are building. The first button on the model landing page lets you do just that. It deploys a SageMaker endpoint. And that's it. SageMaker JumpStart handles the rest of the deployment for you. It retrieves the model package and deploys it on a server running on AWS Cloud in the region you selected. Preparing the endpoint will take a little while, so let's jump to a model that was fully deployed. This button lets you immediately try out your endpoint from a Jupyter notebook. Once the kernel has started, which usually takes 1 to 2 minutes, you can immediately run each cell of the notebook. By default, we provide two example inputs of movie reviews, one positive and one negative. Let's change these inputs to use actual customer reviews. Here are two customer reviews from Amazon.com website for robot vacuum cleaner. Let's see how the model does with those reviews. The first review is a 5-star review, and as you can see, the model labels it properly, with a very high confidence on the positive class. The second review, however, is a 3-star review, so somewhat more of a mixed bag, and the model labels it as negative. This makes sense because, as you can see, the customer is thinking of returning the product or contact customer support. But what's interesting here is that the confidence that the model assigns to this prediction is much lower than for the previous review, because the two scores are much closer to one another than they were previously. What's interesting here is that this notebook provides you with the code snippet that you need in order to query this endpoint programmatically. Now, if you were to include this code inside an application or inside a server you are building, you would have already integrated a very powerful machine learning model into your application. This perhaps would be the beginning of the journey, because this model, even though it performs reasonably well, has been trained only on general English text, not customer reviews. So you could go back to the model landing page here and fine-tune this model on your own data, for example, on customer reviews, in order to improve the model's performance.
Cool. So this was for me super interesting because first, when you started, it was like, a very generic overview of how you start with JumpStart. But then actually I saw that I can, if I know what I'm doing, I could see the Python notebook. I could actually change whatever I have on the notebook there. But then I saw again with Jonathan that even if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm still getting results. So as a developer, I could just deploy this and get inference. So I can imagine we have different type of users that might be interested on JumpStart. So who would you recommend to try SageMaker JumpStart?
Yeah, so you made a really good call out that you don't necessarily have to know anything, right? Like you don't have to know the Python code. And so that's kind of on one axis where we would say, hey, yeah, JumpStart's going to be a really good fit for you is if you're trying to get into machine learning and learn a little bit more. I would say also if you're a little bit newer to SageMaker, seeing some of the demo functionality and getting access to some of those code snippets would really allow you to accelerate your learning based on kind of examples. So I think that it's generally people who are there's two purposes. One is to learn and kind of support and facilitate that, and then on the other axis, it's providing assets that can help accelerate your journey through the machine learning lifecycle.
Oh, and I can imagine a service like this has been exposed to customers before going public. And I believe you have some interesting use cases of customers that were using the service. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from our beta customers and the opportunity that we had with them, it was really neat to be able to see some of the different things that they were using this for. One, for example, had been kind of working and trying to get a fake review model built, and there's some difficulties there, a few road bumps, but then once they were able to actually use JumpStart, it enabled them to be able to do the things that they were doing with a few clicks of a button.
Cool. That sounds super interesting use case. And I believe the time is running over. So I would recommend all of you developers, machine learning engineers that are watching this feed, just go to, try out JumpStart. Just go to SageMaker Studio. You have it right there, and you have a lot of power in your hands. So thank you very much, Jared, Jonathan, and Tyler, and congratulations on the launch.